Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he travels the Vortex, and we're at episode 499, where we put the R in Argonite. I'm Keith.
Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
I love when you surprise us with the opens, especially when they're clever like that.
It's been a while since I've had a clever one like that. It's not actually from a line of dialogue or something.
I'm gonna throw kudos your way because that was an exceptionally clever one.
Oh, thank you.
I was quite tickled by that.
What can I say? The space pirates inspire me.
We should all be so lucky. I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I'm one of the reasons why we've been 3 weeks without a podcast, because I've been in and out of the hospital a little bit with some breathing issues, but I'm on the mend, I hope. I'm still trying to get some answers to why I still can't breathe, but we're getting there.
And I don't know if you folks at home know this, but doing a podcast where you talk, breathing is kind of an essential part of that. So
right.
Very key.
We hope you'll forgive us. It's all Glenn's fault. You can direct your angry mail to Glenn at travelingthevortex.com.
Or your get well soon letters.
Right.
Don't be silly. Nobody's going to send those.
Did you guys do anything in the 3 weeks we've been off?
I avoided
I read a
homework.
book.
What'd you read, Keith?
The Rising Storm. It is the next adult novel for the Star Wars High Republic.
Ah.
And it was really good. They did a lot of good stuff with this one, where Light of the Jedi is still a lot of, initial establishments, but it starts off with a bang. This one kind of is initial establishments, and then it has a big, huge, giant set piece of action in the center of it to help you kind of propel you to the end of the book, and it was really good. I'm very much looking forward to book 3, which has not been announced.
You may have a while to wait.
Yeah. I was lucky the library got it like the day after it was released, and I was the first in line for it, apparently, because I got a notification of this is available for you, so I was able to pounce on it, and I think that's the first time I've ever read, or one of the few times I've read a Star Wars book that quickly after a release. So now I have the very long wait.
Started Dune.
The book?
Yeah.
The
audiobook.
Have you not read it before?
Everybody asked me that with shock and disbelief.
No,
I was telling Keith a little bit last week when we chatted that in high school, obviously it came highly recommended, and a friend of mine said, you got to read Dune. And me being me, it made sense to start at the beginning. So I went and found the prequel, God Emperor of Dune, which is apparently set some 4,000 years before any of the events on Arrakis that are of any import. And I couldn't make it through the first chapter. And so I thought, well, I better go ahead and do Dune first. And then just never really picked it up, just never got to it. So I was at the library, and they had the audiobook, and I thought, oh, I know what I'm going to have in my car for the next 3 years. Because it's like 18 discs. It's a long book.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm enjoying it so far.
Oh. Fun.
Looking forward to the movies.
You're going to watch them both? You haven't even seen the original?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. One of those Saturday matinees on USA with commercials. So I've kind of seen Dune, but I've never actually sat down and watched it. So it's on the docket for this year. I made Mel, because Mel's a huge Dune fan, which I didn't know. But I made her promise that we would watch Dune, and then we would watch the Sci-Fi Channel Dune, and then we would watch the Sci-Fi Channel Children of Dune, and then we would go to the movies to see Denis Villeneuve's Dune.
I don't think I knew Sci-Fi Channel did a version of it.
I've heard mixed things on it. I've heard some of the people say that it's big and epic and in many ways much closer to the book than the David Lynch version. And I've heard other people say they were vaguely disappointed with it. And I guess that continued into Children of Dune because they did not do the next book. Sci-Fi kind of abandoned the thing after that. But I've also heard that, of course, with Dune, it's like, well, are we watching the 2-hour theatrical, the 4-hour European, or the 6-hour Are You Nuts cut?
Right.
I haven't decided yet.
I think since you haven't seen it, you have to start with the theatrical. You got to have a baseline.
To be fair, I probably should. Although I hear the 4-hour European cut, if you can find it, is the way to go.
I read the book and I've only seen the 2-hour cut, so, and it's been a long time since I saw it.
How long has it been?
I watched all of Loki, which has been really good, and Sean hasn't seen the last one, so we won't spoil it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. For the most part, pretty good series. And then
I think it's probably been my favorite of the Marvels so far.
Totally my favorite of the Marvels so far.
I think it's up there for me, probably with WandaVision, but better than Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was a fine series, very good. I quite enjoyed it, but I don't know. I don't know where this one will set. I'm kind of letting it settle and see if I don't think I liked it better than WandaVision or which one's on top now. And then we watched Black Widow this weekend. So,
what did you think of it?
I really, really, really enjoyed it. It doesn't shoot to the top of the best of the Marvel films, but it is a highly entertaining, very fun film that I think it was a good send-off for the character. I think it works really well as a handing off the mantle a bit as well. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I had a lot of fun with it. Really felt like Marvel was back, although there's parts where it's almost outside the box for a Marvel film. It doesn't feel as cookie cutter as some of them do, which I appreciated. And then in some cases it does, but
we have not seen it yet, but we did watch Wonder Woman 84.
Oh, what'd you think?
It was okay. I don't think it was as big of a trash heap as everyone claimed it was.
Yeah, I think it got a lot of hate dumped on it, and I didn't think it was that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't Suicide Squad. Or Dawn or Bat Soup or anything like that. I mean, it was still enjoyable.
Soup, but it was pretty bad.
It has its flaws, but I think I'd still watch it over a couple of the other DC films.
Well, in a few weeks
and it wasn't quite as campy in the 80s as I thought it would be, from some of the reviews.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I didn't think they leaned into the 80s as heavy as some of the people were saying that they did.
I wish they'd have gone heavier, quite honestly. I think if you're gonna call your movie blah 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 1984, okay. There's two ways you can go with this. You can go George Orwell, or you can go campy.
Yeah, it was even less 80s feel than Stranger Things. Like after the initial, Steve comes back and all of that sequence, you kind of forget when it's set. It doesn't really matter anymore.
Well, and where are the needle drops? Where is the awesome soundtrack that everybody was like, yeah, we're gonna go out and buy this because it's full of 80s music just to really set the mood? And didn't get
that's
any
a
of
missed
it.
Opportunity.
Well, in 3 weeks you'll get the Suicide Squad, which will fulfill all of that for you. So
that's true.
And I'm so excited.
I am excited for that one.
And I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control, and I think I like it.
That was an 84. Should we talk a little bit about some news that we found out in the downtime?
Evil of the Daleks is going to be animated in 2021.
Woohoo!
Released in the UK September 27th on DVD, Blu-ray, and an exclusive steelbook.
I'm so excited, and I just can't hide it.
I think that this one, the only thing that surprised me about this one is that it's taken this long to animate it, because I think this is one of the ones that, I think since Power of the Daleks was animated, we've been saying Evil will definitely be one of the ones that gets animated because it's such a lauded serial. So it didn't surprise me that this one finally turned up on the list of things that they're animating. I'm super excited about it. I have listened to the linking narration audio from the surviving television track. I've never watched the recon of it, but and from what I remember, it's been a few years back. From what I remembered, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm excited to be able to put some visuals with the audio this time too.
Yeah, I'm super stoked for this one.
Well, should we move on to a review of another Patrick Troughton Second Doctor story? This one
That's also missing.
Yeah, this one and may never be. No, I don't think. I don't know. This one might, but also featuring Jamie. But this one has Zoe instead of Victoria.
The Space Pirates. The charges detonate in a series of silence explosions, and a space beacon Alpha 1 disintegrates into lumps of metal. The Space Pirates have discovered a new source of precious Argonite. General Hermack of the Space Corps diverts his V-ship to investigate, and arrives in the Pliny system in time to witness the destruction of another beacon. Determined to trap the pirates, he leaves a squad of guards on Beacon Alpha 4, and shortly afterwards in the beacon's computer bay, an incongruous shape of a blue police box materializes. Suspected by the Space Corps of being pirates, and then pursued as spies by the pirates themselves, the Doctor, Zoe, and Jamie risk asphyxiation and vacuum of space, execution, and explosion in their attempts to unmask the mastermind behind the thefts of Argonite.
Wow, that was a mouthful of a...
Ooh, that's the back of the Target novel.
I thought you were going to say the back of the DVD. Is like, no, it's not.
I'll go ahead and give it a bump up.
I would give it a moderate bump myself.
I would concur.
I think what I went into this one a little excited to listen into it, because this is one of the ones that the perceived fan knowledge of it is that it was just terrible, and that it's one that would, never get animated because it's just not a good story, and it's very hokey and it's very silly. And I think there's an element of the hokiness that, and I'll get to it in a minute what I think, but I
think there's one character that brings the hokiness, and that's about it.
I think you're right. But I remember also some people saying, well, they were familiar enough with it that they think that when it does see the light of day, people will reevaluate it, and it will become sort of like an enemy of the world, how that was sort of a panned story until we actually got to see it. Because I did enjoy this more than what I think everybody has made it out to be in all these years that I've heard about this infamous space pirate story. I
don't know if it necessarily reaches the heights of Enemy of the World.
No, it doesn't even come close to reaching the heights of Enemy of the World. But it certainly is better than the bottom of the stack that I think that most people have thrown it on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I concur. I enjoyed this one for its limitations. And then obviously we know that I kind of have a problem with retcons because I tend to have a very...
Recon,
not retcons. Well, I have a problem with retcons too. I keep doing them.
Depending on the retcon.
But I seem to have a really bad attention deficit problem when it comes to watching a recon. And this one still managed to hold the majority of my attention, which I think kind of speaks volumes to what it is, especially considering so much of it was talking heads.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a plus for the animators because it'd be simpler. But at the same time, it's not terribly exciting.
Yeah.
Now, they made up for it with the model work. Oh man, I was in Thunderbird's heaven. So many cool spaceships and hangar bay doors and shuttlecraft and
I'll tell you, I'd like to
looking
know.
like mosquitoes.
I'd like to know how much of that was recreated by loose cannons and how much of that was cut from the existing footage that they had, especially
Yeah,
in
I'm very
episode
curious.
2. There is a lot of that space docking that you could tell was reused and maybe like they renumbered the station. So you could tell that was probably reused. And to be fair, in the 1960s when they made this, they would have done the same thing. They would have just renumbered the stuff and reused a lot of shots. But there are shots that I identified that I didn't feel was in an existing footage, and I have to wonder if Loose Cannon didn't actually put some of that together themselves, which if they did, kudos to them for doing that, because I agree. It certainly gave... it did a lot more for the story by doing that, because as you say, there's not a lot of action. It is a lot of talking heads.
What I find kind of amazing about the story is it moves. There's not really a point where it feels like the story drags. And this is a 6-part story. It's not like this is just a 4-parter. This could easily feel like you're, wading through muck to get through this, especially with it being a recon and being a lost story. But the pacing is so fast and just keeps moving and keeps developing and evolving and moving forward that it never seems to slow down. And I can't, even thinking back on it as a whole, I can't really think of large section anything I could cut to shorten the episode length. Mm-hmm. It's all just essential to what story they're telling.
I think also
and it's compelling.
Well, I think also for a story that could easily be a bottle story because it's all done in space stations, it really feels like it moves from location to location to location, because we start with the Doctor and the companions on the space station, but then we've also got Cavan and his pirates, also moving around a lot. We've got the General's ship, which is the hunting these Argonite thieves, and then we've got the planet below where the pirates are hiding out, and the one lady has the business or organization. So Madeline, I think was her name, and so it jumps around and it moves locations enough that nothing gets stagnant. You don't feel like you're in one place for too long, and so I think that helps with the pacing a lot.
What's also amazing is the fact that it's not an overly complex story, yet it still moves at such a pace. It doesn't. It's a fairly condensed, simple story, but it doesn't feel like it as you're going through it. I mean, there's twists and turns that go through, but it's nothing like it's. I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's more. It's a simple story, but it doesn't feel drawn out.
Yeah,
like most simple stories would feel drawn out.
Right. Well, I think there's enough complexity there to continue to link the through line, but it doesn't end up getting dry because you feel like it's too simple, so you're not getting from point A to point B soon enough or quick enough.
Yeah.
If anything, the plot was slightly predictable. I picked up fairly early that she was going to be in on this.
I was a little disappointed she wasn't actually the head bad guy.
And see, once I had it figured out that, she's doing this, that's why, it's obviously part of their crew is going in and doing this with the pirate base. And okay. But then to find out that she was not the head honcho, that she was being held captive because they had her dad. It's like, okay, so they still managed to pull one over on me. And then I couldn't decide. I was like you. I was a little disappointed because I liked the idea of her being the bad guy.
Well, I guess it's also my modern sensibilities of them kind of me hoping they would kind of even go so far as I kind of suspected that the dad was being held captive, but I hoped that she knew about it and was the one behind it. Like she locked her dad away
She locked
in
him
order
up.
to. That's the direction I was hoping they were going to go, and I was a little disappointed they didn't. But again, that's not me thinking in a 1960s perspective. That's me thinking in a 2021's perspective.
I've
of
been
what
okay
would
with
make
that too.
a convincing story.
I think
Yeah,
that
and sorry, Glenn, go ahead.
no, I think that I did not see the twist of her being in on it. I guess I was a bit naive, but see, I read the book first, and so I didn't see it coming. I did obviously see it coming when I watched the recon, but but reading the book, I felt that Terrence Dicks kind of were. I mean, even though this is one of those ones that's very much the TV on page, but I think that this one was finessed in such a way, for me, the book was finessed in such a way that I didn't suspect that she was in on it because she was so close to General Hammock, and they did a good job of setting that up for me. Like they felt like they knew each other, almost like he was kind of the surrogate father because her father was gone. So I guess that maybe I was a little naive in thinking that she was a little more innocent than she was. But I think another thing that reading the book for me did is I visualized and all of these characters, with the exception of our heroes, much differently than they are portrayed on screen. I think Dervish and Cavan were what I expected, but then when I watched the show, I buy into the tropes. I thought that Dervish was Cavan and Cavan was Dervish just by the way they looked initially in that first series, in that first episode. And I thought, and in fact, for a while, it was throwing me off because they would show one guy while the other guy, was talking, and then I kept getting confused and back, and it took me a long time. And I think it's just because the guy, Dervish had dark hair and a mustache and had kind of a villain face. I hate to, but that's that trope that I think is where we've come to expect. And Cavan's, a little, more clean shaven, blonde hair. Really took me a long time to
see that.
And then General Hermick, which I thought was a bit over the top in the book, was way over the top in the serial. I did not. This guy took what I imagined an over the top general in my head, and then this guy made it even more intense, which I didn't think was possible. And I think my other disappointment was and Madeline, I think, was fine. She did a good job. But my other disappointment was Milo Clancy. I really thoroughly fell in love with this character reading the book. I absolutely loved the character. And then when he first comes on screen, and looks like a 49er prospector, and he's got the gun up on his shoulder like you would a rifle, but it doesn't look quite right because it's halfway between a rifle and a handgun, and it also looks more like a because they're doing sci-fi, but it looks like a squirt gun, and so the way he's holding it's very awkward. It's like if you had a pickaxe goes over your arm like that, it would make sense, or even a rifle, but he's got this weird thing going on, and then coming out of his mouth is this really drawly, almost Jimmy Stewart. It was like he was doing a bad Jimmy Stewart impression, but it was like Jimmy Stewart doing a Southern impression badly. It was just it so took me out of the story so many times because they were just playing so heavy into that 49er prospector
Bonanza type.
Yeah, that really pulled me out of it. That was my biggest disappointment with this with the TV version of it.
Yeah, I would agree. Milo is kind of, I wouldn't go so far as to say obnoxious, but he is definitely way too over the top and too scenery chewing.
Yeah, well, it's almost a caricature.
Yeah.
And it misses I think it misses the mark. I think that they went with that prospector seemingly because these guys, basically that's what they were. They were space prospectors, back in the day when they were going out first finding this Argonite. But so I understand why they went there, but I think they leaned too heavy into the caricature.
Yeah, they definitely did.
I can understand where you guys are coming from, and you're not wrong, but I'm going to go the opposite direction with it. I watched the episodes first and then read the book. And so I had the benefit of having the visual and audio cues when I got to these characters in the book. And while my initial impression of Clancy was, wow, are they hamming this up? I fell in love with him. I really fell hard for this goofy, oddball 49er prospector, dealing with claim jumping pirates and his rickety old ship that only he knows how to fly because the damn thing's falling apart on him, but it's his falling apart, so he can deal with it. And troubles with eating breakfast and just one thing after another. And I just bought it. I was like, yeah, okay.
Those were all elements of the book that I felt that I fell in love with. I liked the character. I liked the nuance of the character. I didn't like the way this guy performed it. That was the problem. Well, all of the things about the character were dead on, and because this was basically the book on page, but yeah, this guy was just, and I guess maybe in my mind, I almost had kind of an old, I don't know, in my mind, the guy had sort of maybe an Irish or a Scottish accent, and that's my own fault. Now, well, I say it's my fault. I tend to read the book first always because I find watching the recons a lot easier because I'm already very familiar with the story. So I don't get that kind of glassy-eyed, I'm lost, I don't know what's happening here because I haven't seen this before. So frequently I will read the book before I watch the recon, just for that fact. But I think in this case, I had imprinted my own character on this guy and was disappointed when this guy didn't follow through.
Yeah, I can get where you're coming from, but I just not only, but it was because of the character tics that it worked for me that they leaned into this almost historical stereotype of a miner. It just, I don't know, it just fit for me. And it was something goofy that Doctor Who would do. If this was another show, maybe I would have complained more about it. But for Doctor Who, it was like, yeah, because I'm sure to the English, all miners fall into this. You have to be, you have to be Grizzly Adams with a pail. And if this had been in color, I guarantee you he had, the red underwear, long johns under his spacesuit. It just, yes, I'm okay with it, yes. So he was so much fun to watch. And even when they tried to drum up some suspense, I don't go leaving here until I check things out. Okay, let's leave here and go look on our own. and we're meant to think that maybe he's in league with the pirates. Nah. I'm not buying that for an instant.
I didn't buy that one bit.
I will say, in the book, I suspected him. Had I watched this first, though, from the way he plays it, I wouldn't have suspected him in this being in league with the pirates. So, I think that I completely agree with what you're saying there. It's like no way. So, to that matter, I think that I agree with it. I like the fact that he seems pretty innocent and wholesome the whole time, while also kind of, ornery.
Very ornery. Yeah.
Very ornery, yeah.
My other disappointment with the story is we've been talking for how long now about this, and we haven't mentioned the Doctor or the companions.
Yeah,
and that's because
they don't have much to do.
They don't have much to do in this entire story. And when I come to a Patrick Troughton story, I want Patrick Troughton, and he's barely there and doesn't get to do much. That's my biggest problem with the story.
Wondered about that myself, because he's not in episode 1 much. If I'm remembering this correctly. It seems like there's a lot of setup for 1 before they show up.
Yeah.
And then they're trapped. And the thing explodes
half the time.
And then they're not on screen. When they are on screen, they're unconscious. and separated from the TARDIS, which, wow, convenient way to write it out of the story.
Yeah.
The bit with the magnets is nice.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. Much better way to explain science than a box in a faraway box. But, I liked that. I think my other problem, though, was that I agree, Keith, that I didn't feel like there was enough of the Doctor in this. And when the Doctor is in this, he's bumbling through a lot of this. And I know that Troughton's Doctor's always been kind of that, funny, get it wrong at first and then get it right. But this one, he almost seemed a little too dumb in this one. In fact, I've always liked when Zoe kind of calls him out on something and corrects him. But this time she does it like 2 or 3 times, and there's most of the time she has a lot of faith in the Doctor. This time she didn't seem like she had much faith in him in a lot of things he was doing. So it made the Doctor feel very out of character for me as well. And then Jamie's there just being eye candy the whole time. I mean, he's just, he's
pretty much
he's the muscle, and he's the brave guy that runs in there to, help people, and he's the first one to, jump in front of the Doctor in order to protect everybody. He's the first one to, stand up to the guards when they come in, and so he's playing his role, but that's really all he does, and that was a bit of a disappointment as well.
We certainly could have used a bit of continuity when the Doctor whips out his screwdriver.
Which, do you guys remember? I thought, and maybe I just supplanted it in my head as I was reading the book. The book had him pull out the sonic screwdriver, right? No, surely not, because that was the other thing. When he pulled out when he used the tuning fork, my first thought was when he talked about the lock being done by sound mechanism, my first thought was, he'll use the sonic screwdriver to find the right frequency. And then he pulls out the tuning fork, and I was like, okay. I don't think tuning forks work that way, but I'll give you a pass.
It'll give him something to do.
Who looks at a tuning fork and goes, this could be a little more sonic?
I mean, a tuning fork, there are several different ones, and each one is a different tone, right?
Usually.
That's how I've always understood them to work.
So the one tuning fork that you use is not going to change in resonance because it's always going to be the same tone, right? Maybe it depends on how strongly you throw it. Because, when Jamie hurls it at the thing, he gets the right chord, I guess.
It is a sonic tuning fork where it's got a little knob on it.
It changes.
You couldn't see.
Yeah, okay.
But he just dials it up to change the frequency.
Like I say, I gave him a pass on that. But for some reason, I thought I remembered, which I think Terrence Dix has done this before, where he is retroactively put the sonic screwdriver into a story before it appeared. But I was certain that it was in this one. Oh well, he would have used the sonic before this because he used it in not the Underwater Menace, Fury from the Deep. Yeah, that's where it was introduced. So
which
he
we
would have
just reviewed.
Yeah, and then he uses it again in the War Games.
Huh. I just think it's funny that for all of our belly aching about the sonic being this weird omni tool that does everything, we get 2 instances, not 1, 2. In the same serial that would have been perfect uses of the sonic. And
so
it's not
true.
there.
That's
and so now
true.
we're complaining about it. Early Doctor Who, you kill me.
That is so true.
Goes to show how much the sonic screwdriver in Fury for the Deep was an on-scene, while filming addition as opposed to in the script.
Yeah. Well, Robert Holmes wrote this one, right?
Yeah, it's his second story.
So he must not have cottoned on to the idea of a sonic screwdriver.
Which was still before his time because the first one was the Crotons, so...
Yeah.
Oh, well, they can't all be perfect.
Yeah.
Like I say, that I can give that a pass. I don't have to have the sonic used appropriately, but we can go with the tuning fork. It was, I guess, an idea.
I'm glad too that our general while he started off being that guy, the kind of stereotypical gonna do this, guns blazing, full speed ahead. This guy's obviously in league with them. That he kind of softened that by the end. Now, it was a bit abrupt, but at least there was that about face there, and he, he wound up being a competent military man versus the monstrosity that so many of them wind up as.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
But I agree with you guys. I think this is far from the train wreck that that fandom tends to paint it as, and was a fairly enjoyable story, even through, the flaws of not having a lot of Second Doctor and a mischaracterized Second Doctor at that.
Well, and I think that to back to my point about animating this, I think there's a lot of people that don't feel that this one should be or will be animated, but I kind of disagree for all the reasons we were talking about. It's got so many different characters. It doesn't have a lot going on that would be difficult to animate. And it also
Got a lot of great space action.
It does, and it also has a lot. It paces really well. So you, as you were pointing out, Keith, there's no time where you feel like it's dragging. You never feel like it's any padding. And I think to animate 6 episodes of this would be just perfect. I think this is totally a candidate for it. I hope they aren't listening to conventional fan wisdom, and which is probably made up of 92% of people that have never even seen it.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't think they'd really do the faceless ones as quickly as they did.
Yeah.
Right? Because that one was a lot more, there's not as many monsters, and it's a bit more subdued of a story, and look how well that came off. So I don't see why this wouldn't be a prime candidate.
I would agree. Well, anything else on this one before we start to wrap things up?
I just say, looking back at that graphic that our friend Rick Cross posted, that kind of broke it down as to how many characters are in a story, which is not something that I had ever really taken into account before. But suddenly that made total sense, because, you gotta, each one of those is going to be moving at some point. You'd have to animate. It's a heck of a lot easier to animate a story that has 4 characters and a crab than it is to animate something with a cast of 1,000.
Right.
Unless they're all Daleks.
Right. And then you just dupe them.
Copy, paste.
Yep.
I'm pleased with this one.
Well, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Well, coming up on the schedule, we are going to take one more week off next week, just to make sure that Glenn has fully recovered from his ordeal. And then that allows us to gear up for a big epiversary. And even if you don't think so, it's big to us. Our 500th episode of Traveling the Vortex. And we are going to rock around the clock, as it were. The music of who, not the composers and the wonderful people who have rearranged the theme song, but we're going a little further afield, a little further off the reservation.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for Glenn to get us those materials, because it's going to be exciting.
Well, you'll have them by this weekend.
That will be followed by our book review. We're getting back into the Lethbridge Stewart Laughing Gnome run with Rise of the Dominator by Robert Mamone. Is that how we decided that one was pronounced?
That was Mamone.
Mamone. And then some more Mucho Master. We're going to do the Big Finish Missy first series. So lots of fun, and of course, schedule is posted for those of you that like to follow along at home.
And be sure to check out that schedule on our website, travelingthevortex.com. You can find all of our updates there. And if you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by going to their Patreon link on our webpage and consider supporting us. Thank you for those of you that do. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you subscribe to this podcast, especially Apple Podcasts, but we would like those recommendations on all podcast sites. That helps bump us up in the ratings and the recommendations. Anything else before we close this one out, fellas? If not, until next time, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Sean, did you forget your order again?
I forgot my line and my order.
It's been 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks. You're forgiven.
I suppose I forgot my order first, and then I forgot my line. Because once I had convinced myself that, oh, no, you are next, I really wanted to say, be seeing you. and the little voice in my head was like, you can't say that. You'll throw Keith off. And then it was
Here
like,
I
oh,
was-
God, what do I say?
So what you're
good
saying
night,
is that-
everybody on the tip of my tongue.
So what you're saying is that could have been a bigger train wreck than it almost was.
Oh, it was a huge train wreck about to happen.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.